on the January 2018, still kind of sounds forward saying 2018, meeting to order. Having done that, it's my privilege at this time to administer the oath of office to our newest board member. I'm gonna just kind of let you come this way, Zach, because I think we're kind of right here in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you would repeat after me.
Sure.
I, Zach Farrar,
I, Zach Farrar,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge
I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of Director
the duty of the office of Director
of the Clinton Utilities Board
of the Clinton Utilities Board
of the City of Clinton, Tennessee,
of the City of Clinton, Tennessee,
which office I am about to assume,
which office I'm about to assume,
and that I will support
and I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Tennessee,
And
so
the-
help me God.
and the state of Tennessee, so help me God.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you here on our board.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, sir.
Why'd you break that up so much for him? You don't do that for us.
Well, because I'm learning. I am learning. As a
I was thinking I had to
As
repeat
a-
like a paragraph at a time.
as an educator,
That's good.
as an educator, you know full well that some people cannot be taught. And since that I have done a little bit better, maybe that says that there's still hope for me. Okay. Well, that's great. Glad to have Zach with us. Let's move on to item number 3. That's the public comment session. Seeing no members of the general public here, I will move on then to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of our prior meeting. Now, we've all had the opportunity to review any additions or corrections or comments at this time. Hearing none, I will ask for a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the prior meeting.
Make a motion. I'll second it.
I have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any approved, like sign. Let's move on then to item number 5, which is the vouchers. We've all again, in our packet, in preparation for the meeting, had the opportunity to review the vouchers. Are there any questions, corrections, additions? If not, then again, I would ask for a motion and I would ask for a second for the approval of the vouchers.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? By like sign. Item number 6 is the approval of the monthly reports for the month of November. For that, we will call on Mr. Fagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you, you have the revenue and expense summary for the year through November 2017. For the month, the electric department had a net income of $338,000, and the water and sewer department had a change in net assets of $1,339. That's a good month for both departments. The year-to-date forecast, we are ahead in the electric department, $450,000. I will say the bulk of that is the revenue less power cost. Our margin there is $243,000 over the forecast. But we are also running our expenses under this $200,000 to help Zach out a little bit. Anytime these numbers in this difference column are positive, that's a good thing, and if they're negative, then it may not be a positive thing. But the $200,000 means our expenses are $200,000 less than the forecast. So you add all that together, and you're $450,000 ahead. The water and sewer department, the summer killed us in the water department with the water sales being down so much because it just wasn't hot and it rained a lot. So water sales were down, which makes sewer sales down, but our expenses are running $46,000 under the forecast, so we're still behind our forecast, but not as much as our sales would indicate that we would be. But overall, we're still doing good at $38,000, changing net assets. Anytime that's positive in those departments, that's a good sign. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
December will probably be good too, won't it, with
Well,
weather that we had?
the sales are going to be good because if you look at our degree days for December, you're at 742 degree days. Last year was 695, and the 5-year average is 686. So that means it was cold, but all that with how that affects demand and load and all that, you just never know until the numbers come in. You know, if it was that cold for the entire month, then it seems to be more beneficial. But that's just not always the case when you have a few cold weeks in a month. You know, and Ernie does as much as he can with the virtual power plant, shaving that peak. But that peak impacts that margin so much that you just don't know until the numbers come out. But we'll try to be positive and say, yeah, it's going to be a great month.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I will make one, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong here, but based on the TVA billing, we pay power for the month based on the highest demand day.
It's actually the highest demand hour.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
1
See,
hour of the
thanks
whole
for the
month.
correction, because I was thinking that it was a 24-hour time period. It is the 1 hour time period. So we could have, Zach, we could have one day out of the month that it's 7 degrees, say overnight, and then it warms back up to like an overnight low of 20 and stay that way for the rest of the month. But we're going to pay like it's 7 on that day, and that power demand, that's what TVA charges us. Doesn't seem right, doesn't seem equitable to me.
Why is it that way?
There are two
Why is the grass
ways
green?
to look at this, and it's a little bit complicated, but it does make a lot of sense. There's what they call the demand for energy, and then the usage of that energy. It costs more to turn a motor on than it does when it's fully running, because it's that first hit that makes a difference. So I've used a Walmart metaphor before. Walmart has 500 cashier places and 2 part-time cashiers working them, you say. But they have to have all of those cashiers for the 3 days that there are massive amount of people in there shopping. So we have, and TVA has to have the facility in order to meet that demand whenever that demand hits, and it only hits at certain times. So when that big flood comes in, they have to have the infrastructure out there to handle that demand. And then when everything's on and everybody turns their stoves on in the morning and they turn their little heater fans on in the bathroom and things like that, and that peak, we've met that peak of demand, then it has to stay on in order to run for hours, and that's where your light would go, and you just keep that on, and that gives you the energy charge. What we charge our residential customers is the energy charge, how much energy you use, not how much demand you use when you turn it on. We do have demand meters for commercials and industrial customers, because that individually they can impact how that hits. So TVA charges us that same way. If our system has a demand at any peak time, then they are going to charge us tremendously for the difference between KW and KWH is the way they do that. KW being the demand, KWH being the energy. When that peak is met, they say, okay, so that whole month, that is the highest you've used for that 1 hour in that month. We're going to charge you at that peak rate, because we had the facility there in order for you to meet that peak, which is why we work very hard, and you'll learn over time about what we call peak shaving. What we try to do is we try to make Matterhorn into a rolling hill. You see, we try to shave that peak. And that's what Ernie and his team do all the time, which it's part of the uniqueness that we have is the ability to shave that peak, and we do that through demand and other things that we incorporate. So as we see that demand rising to the peak, we implement procedures that will actually take off the load so we can shave that peak. And every KW that we shave, what are we up to now, EB?
Right at $10 wholesale.
$10. So every KW that we are able to shave, we save $10. So, you can see for this month alone, pull that up, that virtual power plant, we're at $80-some thousand. The difference in,
I believe it's 102 this month.
yes,
I mean, I'm going from memory.
I was going from last month.
Okay, it's 108.
But go to the chart, Dud.
All right.
There you go. Look, 82,000, what a great memory. See the difference in the red and the blue. The blue is what we actually had in demand. And did you see, we saw this peak going up when it started right here at 6 a.m. in the morning. People start getting up. That's when our folks start putting processes in place in anticipation of that shave peak. So where the blue then becomes what the actual peak was, the red is where the peak was going. So we save the difference between this highest peak in the red and the highest leftover peak in the blue. And that, for this past month alone, was $82,656. And that's at $10.08 per KW. So the utilities that can't do this, which are most by far, and I don't know KUB can't do this. So we saved $82,000 because we were able to shave that peak just this past month. And now we've been doing this for quite some time. We were the first to implement what you see right here of the 154 utilities in the valley. So we're into millions of dollars worth of savings. But for 1 month alone, 82,656 shaving peak on KW.
While we're there, real quick, Greg, because he may have seen, I'm looking for that spreadsheet now.
Right there.
Right here that's kind of hard to read, 108, that's really what we saved because there's more to it than controlling our peak through voltage.
That's right.
We have a very unique program that as far as I know, we're the only utility that has this demand partnership program. That saved $20,000 where we work with our general power customers and we give them a credit for them to manipulate their loads during certain times, and we send them text messages.
Show them the
and
stack,
things.
Dud, where it's stacked.
And the direct load control, that's our water heaters and pool pumps, that's almost $5,000. So you put everything together and you get the 108 for the month.
Get to that
And
stack
I
chart.
rounded that we got 30,000 customers. We got just a few over that.
So,
And I took 108 and I said that saved
right,
each customer about $3.60 for that 1 month.
for the
And I
1
mean,
month.
You
So
know,
you can see the lion's share of what makes our
Is this
virtual
voltage
power
reduction,
plant
which
up
was
is-
the 82,000?
Yeah, is the voltage manipulation that we can do, and then Dan's facilities play a part in that. Our own things that we do here at the office, the pool pumps, the water heaters, and our demand partners that we have out there. All those go to make a virtual power plant in reducing demand that would have otherwise been on the system.
There is no one in the valley that has a setup like this, exactly like this, because they don't have these demand partners, as part of that. But very few have the capability of doing that, and that saves real money. And that gets back to when Dudley talks about the difference between the power cost and the power revenue, that margin in there has been affected by $82,000, or I'm sorry, 108 when you put it all together, which is a very positive impact. If we're unable on this chart to shave, if that peak gets away from us, that's when it's gonna turn, that's when we would be just like everybody else, you say, and we wouldn't be able to get that revenue. But when you're looking at $100,000 and some a month, times 12 months, that's 1.2 million. It's a good year.
Mr. Bowles, is our peak hour fairly consistent from one month to the next?
It's very consistent in the wintertime, especially when it's brutally cold. It's typically, you can just about bet it's gonna be the 7 to 8 a.m. time frame, because they do it on the clock hour. In the summer, it's fairly predictable because we know it's gonna be between 4 and 6, and a lot of times it's
In the
5
heat.
p.m., the heat of the day. The one that is hard to track is the spring and the fall, which are the shoulder months, and you know, we really have to be on our game for those months.
What about weekends?
Weekends are not considered peak time in terms of our rates and so forth. So we have to chase what we call an off-peak. If you look back at this, Dudley, where is that thing?
I love it that he's controlling it and he's yelling at you. You know, that is really good. I'm gonna try that next time too.
Well,
It's almost like a marriage relationship.
Yeah.
you can see these little stray numbers in this column here. See where it says off-peak, 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 off-peak? We actually chase 2 peaks every month. We chase the true peak, which occurs during a set time frame of the day, and then all the other hours of the day by TVA's rate are considered off-peak. So, but we're really looking at an off-peak peak. So if we can shave that as well, that's when we hit a month here last year. It was the highest ever savings, 136,000. And that's because we had some off-peak savings that we did a very good job of manipulating as well. And that's the biggest windfall we've had on a monthly basis with our virtual power plant.
January of last year.
Yes.
Explain that again. How do you shave it on the off-peak hours?
TVA's charging by their peak, right?
Well, they charge more on the peak than they do the off-peak, but we still get charged for the highest off-peak hour and the highest on-peak hour. Different rates, but still 2 different billing points that we're looking at every month. So to the extent we can dive underneath on one or both of those is the savings that we can realize. Now, if our system peak occurs during a on-peak period, time frame that TVA has declared, then there's only one peak. And that's why you don't see numbers every month under this off-peak.
That's gonna be my next question.
Yeah, that's why.
Not to overload you, but I think it's always the best opportunity to share information after a question has been asked. The other peak that we run is TVA's peak, because TVA affects everyone in the valley. So TVA has a peak. We are guardians of our system peak, but we are also concerned about TVA's peak, because TVA buys offline. When they're hitting their peak, they'll buy outside of the valley. What more than what they're able to generate, they buy power. And what they buy what they call on-peak power. And that time, sometimes as much as 17 and 18 times what they sell it for. Because they've got to meet their peak, you see. They have got to meet their demand, you see, and then that peaks them. So what we have done And again, we are one of 154 power distributors across 7 states. Clinton Utilities Board, and Clinton Utilities Board was the first one in the valley of the 154 to design and demonstrate this demand response, and TVA called on us to shave their peak.
What was that, Greg, about, how many years ago was that
It's
now,
about
Ernie?
3 years ago.
Wasn't it about 3?
For the first time, we've been called in the last 2 weeks by
We've had
TVA.
20
Oh, I know, but I'm saying they sort of said, hey, you know, you guys got this going, this is, help us.
So what they do
help
is
us.
they use us as part of their portfolio. So when they are heading up to peak, they say, how much can you help us? You know, shave peak. And then we'll go in and we'll do a calculation, and Ernie will say, well, we can give you this much in KW, and that will shave their peak. What which you'd think would be an easy thing, all we ask is that we're kept whole. You know, which is hasn't been that easy with TVA. You would think if we're helping them shave their peak, which is substantial, that we don't want to do it as a sacrifice to our own ratepayers, because we're the ones that put this infrastructure in place. So we have had to battle, and I think we finally got it squared away, that when they do, and I think we've had 20 times since they've called on us, over 20 times, that when we go and assist them in shaving their peak, that it is not a negative to our peak.
We receive a compensation for
That's
that
right,
effort.
which we want, and all we're asking for is.
Make us whole.
Make us whole, that's right. So, yes, they do, and essentially what we do there is we not only shave the peak of our system, we help shave TVA's peak, and that helps everybody in the system, including us. So there's our story on peak, like nobody's business.
Have we got any other questions relative to item number 6, which is our monthly reports for the month of November? I think that was time well spent.
One quick thing to point out, and then I will shut up. That 338,694 that Dudley told you is our net income for the month. Without the virtual power plant, that would be, to the penny, the $110,000 less that you saw that we saved from the virtual power plant. It's straight bottom line dollars.
The 108, 179.
Right.
Great news. Any other questions or comments? I do need a motion, and I need a second for the approval of the monthly reports of November.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I need to write that down so I don't forget it. I was pointing out to one of our board members that I'm still trying to learn. I wrote down that I needed motion second, because sometimes when
we did
when
it
we get
twice
in a
last month.
protracted discussion, I might lose track of the fact that we've not had a motion and second. So, okay, we do need that. And, did we get that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you get it, Ernie? After the chairman started?
Oh, I got the motion in the second. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, let's vote then on the approval of the monthly reports for the month of November. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed by like sign. As is custom, we're going to start with Mr. Bowles on item number 7, which is project status report for the electrical.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As always, these are the projects that we're tracking for you that appear in your capital outlay budget. And we do have a plethora of other projects going on. They're just much further under the radar than these. So these we keep you apprised of every month. The biggest project on the sheet is our substation upgrade, the phase 3 of our Claxton sub. That's now about 85% complete, and we hope in early spring to be completely finished with that project. It's gone very well, and Ronnie Hahn has done just an exceptional job spearheading that. He is a craftsman like nobody's business, and he has a great pride in his work, and it shows in the product. Our own crews are working on Briceville Highway as well as the Offutt Spur. road job that you approved last month. We're both of those jobs are about a fifth of the way complete, and both are appearing to be on time and on budget. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have on our electric, engineering, or operations.
Just on the plethora part, we budget for and approve all of these projects, but is there some dollar limit as to when you come to the board for approval, or when you just do them out of?
Of course, each of these are itemized.
Yeah,
The others are incorporated in the budget in mass. Dudley has their different things like the pole replacements
Yeah.
that we do. We call those 11 jobs, and so we have so much money. And transformer upgrades, this is so much money. But those are also in your capital outlay. They're just in the, what we call the top part of the
okay.
sheet, whereas these named projects are individually listed in the bottom part.
and what causes you to have a named project as opposed to a?
The value, the amount. We try to showcase those for you because they are where the money, the bulk of the money is going.
Any other questions? All right. If there are none, then let's move on and let's ask Mr. Hawkins to update us on our wastewater treatment plant project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got one project that, like Ernie said, we've got a lot going on, but this is the one project that hits the board agenda. On a 12-month project, you can see we're about 50% complete with the dollars and the days. So this is tracking according to schedule, and we're pleased with the way it's progressing. Got any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Any comments or questions? If not, then let's move on. Thanks for the review, gentlemen. Let's move on to item number 8. That's the approval of work order number 645, which is a capital outlay project in the amount of $350,000, I believe. Am I right?
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This, again, is an itemized project for your capital outlay. It is the second phase of extensive renovations and upgrades that we've been performing to the system that was originally installed by TVA in the city of Norris in the 1930s, essentially. Again, phase 2, we're going to replace some of the most veteran of the sections of line, consisting of about a mile of new conductor, and we're going to use our aerial cable type system that is extremely reliable. In fact, the very first aerial cable line we installed was in Norris about 17 or 18 years ago, and we have not had a single outage associated with that section of aerial cable since it was installed. So that gives you some idea, if you know anything about Norris and the trees and so forth, what a feat that really is. That is an attestation to just how robust that aerial cable system is. This, once we engineered it, final engineering, we're estimating $345,774. It's in your budget, I believe, at $350, so we're feeling real good about those numbers. And with your blessing, unless there are questions, we would ask that you approve our work order 645 as presented.
Again, I'll open the floor up for any questions that anyone may have regarding project work order number 645. Hearing none, I ask for a motion, ask for a second for the approval of the same.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. Item number 9 is one that I requested be placed, pardon me, on our agenda. And that is that I would like to propose a workshop which will act as a new member orientation with focus on all board and managerial functions. I feel like it should be scheduled as soon as possible, as the budget process for 2018 and 2019 will begin shortly. And if we need to, obviously, we'd like to schedule it at this meeting if possible. If not, if people need to consult calendars, then let's be prepared to come knowing our calendars, knowing our schedules, and ready to set a date for that workshop, where, as I say, we'll discuss all board functions, all managerial functions, and I'm kind of opening up and saying, like, Ms. Violet, are you comfortable in establishing a date
I
today?
would like to do that today if we can, maybe tentatively.
Ms. Harrell? Mr. Price?
I have my calendar.
Mr. Farah?
I'm ready.
Okay, all right, if everybody has their calendars, then let's begin to try and determine a best date for this. And I'm certainly open to anyone, whether that they say, like, want to do it on a weekday, weekend, what have you. And I'm breaking out a couple of schedules that I live by this time of year, since I work part-time for the University of Tennessee as an usher at Thompson Bowling. I just want to make sure I don't have any ball games in, so I've got my schedules.
You work with Don? I didn't know that.
I actually work for a different supervisor, but yes, Don Gray's the one that initially hired me in over at Neyland Stadium back in the late 90s.
Oh, wow, I didn't know
So,
that.
and of course, my in-laws live pretty much directly across the street from Don. That kind of yellow brick.
Live around the corner, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the favor? And obviously, we want to try to be sensitive to staff and to board members in terms of looking at a time that's best.
February 1st is a Thursday, which is the time we're used to. Do you want to meet in the evening, or do you want to meet in the afternoon, or what would the board's pleasure there be?
February 1st, Texas A&M, Knoxville, 6:30. Sorry, but that's why I've got these puppies out in terms of.
What about a Monday night, the 29th of January or the 5th of February?
I don't see that as a problem on my schedules. If everybody could kind of take a look at theirs.
I've got a TVPPA board meeting on that day.
Which
on the
one?
5th,
On the
but
5th,
not the 1st. Or what was the other?
29th was a
29th.
Monday.
Yeah, I didn't have anything on the
January
29th.
29.
What time are we talking?
Whatever time you say.
I was gonna say, we'll work out a time right now too. If 29th will work.
I could not be here before 5:30 on the 29th. Just
Okay.
throwing that out there.
That gives us publication time, does it not, Mr. Fay?
Yes, sir.
And if we start at 5:30 on Monday, the 29th, does that appear to be doable for everyone?
It's good by me.
It's good by me, Vicky?
That would work.
Zach?
It is good with me.
Okay. Ernie?
Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, I will be on vacation. I'll be returning on the 30th, but you all don't need me necessarily on this.
No, we really do not. I'm just trying to see, and of course, Mr. Fay says it's good for him. Mr. Fagan? Mr. Hawkins?
Good.
I'm not sure how many of the staff will be there.
Well, what I was gonna say is we got you there, big guy, and, it appears that all board members, and as I say, this is to kind of help all of us and to help us, I'm gonna call it, all get, I guess you'd say, all up to speed, and hopefully all of us synchronized as far as knowledge of board and managerial activities. That's what we want to do. So, hearing that, I would like to go on ahead then, and I guess probably the nice thing would be to get a motion in a second to go on ahead and have it at 5:30 Or would 6 be better, Penny?
I think I can, it'll be close, but I think I can be here by 5:30.
Okay. Then let's set for 1/29/18 at 5:30 PM. Do I have a motion and second to
So
that
moved.
effect?
Second, did you say 27?
29.
29.
29, okay.
I thought I did.
Okay, I didn't,
I meant January 29th, if I
okay, okay. I
did
just
not
wanted to
say
be sure.
that, pardon me. Okay, did we get we got a motion and second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Thank you.
It's the second, I'm sorry, who seconded that?
I'll second it.
I was thinking that you did anyway. Okay, that takes care of item number 9.
Can we ask, just since it's an unusual day, that we have sweet Miss Barbie call and remind us?
No
that
doubt
morning?
About it.
Not that I ever get to answer her call when she calls, but when I see her number pop up, I know who it is and what it's about.
And she leaves
Tell
a
her
good
to
message.
text you or something.
I'm gonna try to have some finger something to eat, so.
Some caviar.
Now, I don't believe it'll be caviar, but it'll be more than peanuts and pretzels.
Be more than a granola bar.
It will be, yes.
Do we need a motion to authorize the expenditure?
No, sir, you do not.
Okay.
You do not.
I didn't, that was
I'm
in
good up to
jest.
50,000.
That was in jest. That was in jest, as I was trying to play the attorney there. Isn't that right, Mr. Farrer? When you sit down and say
That's
you
right.
don't ask
Gotta-
any question that you
gotta
don't
watch those
already know the
fiduciary
answer
duties.
to.
That's right.
And that's what I was doing. Okay. Let's move on then to item number 10, which is other business. Mr. Fay.
You do have a copy of your significant accomplishments, which is a kind of a neat thing that we do once a year. It also helps us keep organized as we look back to try to remember what we did accomplish, over the years. That's been helpful recently for me. I have received this morning a email from the Miller and Martin attorney, Carla Smith, who represents TVPPA. As some of you may remember, I serve on a unique group, of what we call a small group of 4 power distributors representing the 154. Both the 7 states and the TVPPA board voted unanimously to offer the 4 of us up to negotiate with TVA on pressing issues that include contract flexibility and also the preservation of the public power model by having on all requirements, which TVA does, that we require everything, all utilities and electricity bought through TVA. And the ongoing problem with that is, with technology and the advances in technology, there are other opportunities for our customers to generate, solar being one of them, and that becomes and has become nationwide increasingly difficult, and it gets back to the demand issue. If on a sunny day you can generate with solar panels on your house sufficient to where you then have no energy consumption, but on the freezing cold dark night of February, there's no solar going on. So then you would then look to us to be the provider of last resort. Everything else fails, all of that fails. We have to have the infrastructure in place in order to meet whatever your needs are whenever you need it. So it becomes a very a fluid thing as to how can we address this issue. Those are some of the problems that we have. The other issue is more and more society is demanding through some of these corporate companies that are trying to be as green as they can, that they have new to the earth energy resources that's renewable. What they want is to lower their carbon footprint, and by doing that, there are technologies that will help provide that. Again, solar being one of the keys, wind another, hydrogen. They're looking at a lot of different things, but many names that you would recognize will withholding building in certain areas unless they can be guaranteed that the power supplied to them comes from renewable energy. So they're looking now, and companies are providing, since there is a demand for that, facilities that they'll put on site that will provide them renewable energy on site. Solar collectors, for example, pods that they use. That then becomes power that's generated and brought in behind our meter. So we're not selling that power. We're only supplementing what additional they may need, and that oftentimes depends on the weather. Where these companies come to the power providers and they ask, can you provide this for us, this renewable energy for us, which makes good sense that the utility can, depending on the demand and the industry, provide a facility that will meet that need before the meter, which means then it becomes a sale for the local utilities, or if TVA would partner with us to do that, it would be something that would be a positive. But you need to understand that if, we'll just say 10 cents a kWh, if they get it behind the meter and they're getting solar now and they can get that for 6 cents a kWh, you know, they're paying 4 cents less, and TVA is losing the 10 cents on the wholesale. So it becomes a real thing of numbers. We do not currently have the flexibility which we require in order to be a service to these industrial customers, so that has become an issue. How can we have contract flexibility, which we have none right now? We are under all requirements purchased through TVA, which historically has not been an issue, but technology has made that an issue. And number two, the OMB and the last 4 administrations have recommended the divestiture of TVA. Let's sell TVA. The Heritage Foundation's done 2 major reports on why is it a good idea to sell TVA. I don't believe it is a good idea to sell TVA. You know, there's a lot more to it. But if TVA was sold, and if you look at the Heritage Foundation's, what they say, to break it into 2 parts, one through the dams and the other through the power end, you know, all that money would go back to the National Treasury, which the reality of it is all of this infrastructure has been paid by the ratepayers within the valley. We have paid for every pole and wire and dam, and everything out there has been paid with electric rates, you see. So
It gets no taxpayer subsidy.
None at all. So our position has been, and I've been very vocal, and if you've read any of that in the magazine, you know, we have got to protect the 9 million ratepayers in the valley, and if TVA does get sold, then the equity piece needs to come to the ratepayers. So those are 2 main issues that are a big logjam, and the senior leadership in the valley has been tasked with negotiating how can we do our minefield through and get some acknowledgement that there is an equity piece to all of the LPCs, local power companies, and the contract flexibility facing the reality of the technologies today. So this group has been meeting with the senior leadership, the CEO, the CFO, the lead attorney, with TVA in order to hammer out what can we do within the parameters of what the TVA Act says and meet these needs, and we're making progress. The reason I bring all of this up now is they are now looking from me to sign a non-disclosure agreement So, once I sign this, then part of this is specific that I cannot share any information with you all. And, you know, I am your employee, yet I will be locked down into the fact that I'll be going, I'll be negotiating, but I will not be able to share this. So I wanted to tell you beforehand, you know, and unless I'm directed otherwise, it's my intention to, because I think we need it, we need this, and been very vocal, because I conceptually understand what I think is the right move for public power and where we need to lead TVA in order to protect not only all of the ratepayers of CUB, but the 9 million ratepayers in the valley. 4 of us were charged with this. I'm one of the 4. All 4 of us are being asked to sign this NDA. So unless I am directed otherwise, it's my intention to sign it. And then I just want to tell you, I will be, as much as I would like to keep you completely up to speed, I will not be able to discuss it anymore. And we have talked about it in the past. So I would like direction from the board on that.
I believe that would, that a motion and a second to authorize you to sign the non-disclosure agreement would be the correct action by our board.
I think that would be
And so
great.
I would ask for a motion and a second for Mr. Fay to execute his signature on the non-disclosure agreement.
Can I ask a question before we do that?
Oh, absolutely. And I was gonna say, any questions, comments? That goes without saying. The floor is always open.
I'm impressed and glad that you are one of the 4 leading that effort. I guess my question is there any negative that would come back on
It would come
CUB?
back on me if I broke that. Then they would look for monetary damages. You know, they're really hot on this because it is such a hot button issue. Since it would be my signature, it would be on me, and because of the gravity of what we're facing, I'm willing to take that financial risk because the reward is substantial. To be honest, I'm a little uncomfortable, you know, with doing that, but I just have to keep my mouth shut, which in itself will be, you know, pretty impressive, I gotta tell you. But that's this is an historic time. I have suggested that should we be unable to come to an accommodation, that I would be pushing for TVPPA to lobby to take over TVA. That we would actually, if they were going to divest, then let's divest to the 154, and then we will do and contract out the operations. If we're going to lose it, then we need to own it. Our intention is not to lose it. You say, I want TVA to stay just like it is, because I think that is the best public power model. I think it's the best public power model in the country. But undeniably, TVA has made some terrible financial decisions that we are paying for today. I mean, how many nuclear plants are built and never opened and now being sold for farmland? You know, it's just ratepayers' money has been spent in tremendously destructive ways, and
But again, not taxpayers,
ratepayers. It's always that's one of the things, Zach, because your hat has always been taxpayer, to shift that hat to a ratepayer in the 6 different counties, it's not an easy thing to do. But there is of great importance that we get some
Why are
headway
they
on
asking
this.
you to sign it? So if I get this right, you and three other gentlemen representing TV PPA
Seven States Power Corporation,
are negotiating with a group from the TVA,
the top management. in
correct, including their attorneys, and they are asking you sign a non-disclosure.
They're signing it too.
Okay, why?
Because we're gonna float out so many different ideas that should this get out publicly, before their board gets an opportunity to review it, that it would be destructive. For example, if we said, let's think about whether or not we can allow up to 10 megawatts per utility, the freedom to generate up to 10 megawatts. How then we would do the iterations of how that would run through the power contract, how that would run through all of our rate structures, what would that mean to the revenue, the TVA to cover their fixed cost, and what application would have to be in play for that to happen. So if we were working on a 10 megawatt scenario, and then that's information got out at a 10 megawatt scenario, then there would be companies then could potentially say, well, we've got a 10 megawatt solution, or the industries would say, well, I want 10 megawatts, and then this industry wants 10 megawatts, and why can't you do 30 megawatts? And then how do we do that under the TVA Act if it says all generation electrical requirements will come under the TVA Act? Any of that information gets out, squirts out, while we're in the formation of a potential solution, but before we've fleshed it out, then that becomes difficult, because they're going to hand us, and we're going to look at financials that are detailed and specific to the inner workings of how TVA generates revenue per each class of customer, and if that became, somebody took some of that and then shared that with which would be of value outside of the valley for the competition. TVA's butted up against Duke, TVA's butted up against Southern, TVA's butted up against Kentucky.
Who drafted the NDA?
TVA drafted it, and our attorneys have reviewed it.
Well, what is your attorney's recommendation?
That we sign it.
Okay. Well, what duty does this board owe to? I don't know who. I'm assuming who TVPPA is, but what duty do I, as a board member, owe TVPPA?
You have no duty. We are members. We are a part of that association. Every power company in the valley is a member.
154 utilities in TVA Valley.
But not of 7 states. That is another corporation, and that corporation was designed in order to facilitate capital investment that TVA, that we can buy and TVA can lease, which is one of the ways that we can address this equity. So TVA goes out and borrows money to build Bellefonte. If 7 States Power Corporation borrowed the money and leased that to Bellefonte, it would get, first of all, TVA wouldn't have to borrow the money. It helps their balance sheet, and they contract with 7 states, which would service the debt and principal on whatever they borrowed. It is a workaround in order to, if TVA was sold, that wouldn't be an asset that would transfer.
So to sum it up, TVPPA is in discussions with TVA to develop a solution.
That's correct.
Various solutions. A part of that discussion and negotiation, they've asked that all parties enter into a non-disclosure agreement. The TVPPA attorneys have reviewed it, the TVA attorneys have created it, and everyone is in agreement. you're asking, or we're trying to determine whether we should agree or support your signature on this, but it really doesn't affect necessarily CUB per se.
Other than the fact that as your employee, I'm gonna be participating in this negotiation, and I'm gonna be unable to keep you up to speed on that, which on every other board that I serve, in every other capacity, I have the freedom to keep you up to speed.
And perhaps even more importantly, you're supporting his role, Greg's role as being the representative, one of four, to help shape public power policy in the valley for the future.
Right. But you're really there as a representative of TV PPA. You just.
I'm there really on both boards. I represent both boards.
Okay. And you feel like you don't have a problem, you know, with any fiduciary duties owed to us by signing the non-disclosure?
No, I don't.
I don't have any other questions.
I just want to be sure, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but as a board member, I want to be sure you are protected. If TBA got upset and came out swinging, they're pretty powerful. I want to be sure that CUB wouldn't have any fallout from this, but I say that, but then I say I'm proud of you for stepping in there, just like Ernie said. This is a historical moment, but I just want to be sure you're protected.
Thank you.
We're protected.
Everyone is protected. The exposure comes if I leaked information, and that information was damaging financially to TVA. You know, I told them, I'm not even gonna tell Nancy where I'm going. I mean, it's just that it's the right thing to do, because obviously the White House can't even keep secrets, you know, the CIA can't keep secrets. It is destructive when you feel like you can offer a suggestion that if we offer that isn't popular with the LPCs, but we offer that as let's dig down into this. If it got back, well, this one is saying this, then we lose confidence with the membership. Right now, of those boards, it was a unanimous vote on both boards for these four. A unanimous, and I'm telling you, that's not easy when you've got 30-some on the board, and all CEOs in their own right, and you know, all have a voice and opinion about what they think is the way to move forward, and they all recognize they're getting none of this either. You know, so it's not like we're going back to the TV PPA board, or we're going back to the 7 states board and bringing them up to speed. We can't bring those boards up to speed. It's only these 4.
Greg, as I understand it, there's no exposure from you serving on the board and participating in trying to work through it. The exposure is if you violate the
That's correct.
non-disclosure. That's it.
That's correct.
And that would be personal,
That's correct.
not utility.
That's correct. That is correct.
And that was my, and that was my point in asking for a motion and second, that we authorize you and that we understand that we, in effect, will be kept in the dark regarding these negotiations. And we're basically saying we support you in your role going forward, and we understand we're gonna be kept in the
Yeah,
dark.
essentially what you're saying is,
We're kept
I
in-
understand that we're gonna be kept in the dark.
We're gonna
Not
be-
that I'm gonna share the
We're gonna be
exposure with
kept
you.
in the
Right.
dark, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the commitment from a time?
There it's open end, but I can tell you, Charles, that I have been vigilant on moving this rope, because it is like pushing a rope. I have been involved in one way or another since 2000. Now it's 2018. I went to Nashville in 2001 twice a week to work on long-term contracts And the deal was we were gonna try to get capital credits for that. So if we signed a long-term contract, then we would get capital credits, which meant if TVA was sold, then they would have to meet these, you'd have so many credits towards how much capital you were invested in. We went to retained earnings. I allocate retained earnings according to whether it was customers or whether it was KWH or whether it was KW, some means to where we could make a distribution that would obligate retained earnings. Of course, you're constantly butting up against the TVA Act because that is owned by the United States government, you see? So you can't attach the assets. You can't attach the assets because the assets are the government's, and then you'd have to open up the act to it, which is why we were working around on this lease agreement. And some of the things that we're working on now, which I've had a lot to do with, are very creative. But I think should we be successful, then we're going to meet the two criteria, and that is protect the 9 million ratepayers of public power in the valley if TVA is sold, and number two, give us an opportunity not to lose revenue. Look at over the years since the introduction of energy efficiencies, which we support, we advertise, we encourage. But the fact is, which goes to why nuclear plants are being sold, the fact is the trend line for sales, even though our industry has picked up, the trend line across the valley is lower KWH sales. And that is if you've got Nest, thermostats in your home or LED lights, all of that speaks to energy efficiency. All of that means a reduction in sales. And now we're going to face solar. And that we know is coming because this Sun City, which is a big corporation, their Erlanger in Chattanooga just put in a facility of solar and coupled with batteries, in their facility, and EPB lost all of that load, So is that a good thing? It's a good thing for Erlanger. Is it a good thing for EPB? Well, no, it's not, because EPB should have been the one to be able to provide that facility with this low carbon footprint energy resource. They could have done that, but by the contract, they were forbidden to do it. And so are we.
So Greg, just back to this non-disclosure, any solutions that would come out of the discussions and at the summit and the talks that you're having with these people? I mean, at some point, those solutions come public.
That's correct.
And are open to.
That's correct.
To the public scrutiny. So it's just sort of these discussions.
That's right.
It sounds like both parties are going to be privy to maybe some.
Open discussion.
And you may be privy to some information that could be sensitive. You're going to see some secret sauce, so to speak.
That's right.
So they want to make sure that they're kept safe, that you're not going to go leak out some of their proprietary information that could be damaging to their business, which I understand. I increasingly am more comfortable with it. Just being a brand new board member, I'm going to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and I'm not going to communicate with you is not giving me warm fuzzy feelings, okay? But what I'm understanding, and just that you will not, your duty of care, your duty of loyalty, and your duty not to have a conflict of interest is not going to in any way be affected by this entering the non-disclosure.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm comfortable with it. I make a motion that we allow Mr. Fay to enter into the non-disclosure agreement.
And I second that.
Any other discussion? None? Let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Like sign.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. What I and I'll just tell Zach what I normally do. I start on one end or the other. And in this case, I'm gonna start down here with Ms. Violet.
It's
Are
the
there
first time
any
he's
other
ever spoken
things
on
that
that.
you would like? Well, Zach, I'm giving you a chance to listen to what they
Yeah,
say, and
sure.
it might
No
answer
problem.
some of your questions.
There you
and
go.
That's the reason I started on this end this time. There was a method to my madness.
That's right. I know I sound like a broken record, but I am just so impressed every time I come to a meeting to see what CUB is doing. I know that has so much to do with the leadership, starting with Mr. Fay and everybody sitting around these tables. So once again, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much.
You know, I'm assuming that you all have met with Zach, and first of all, I want to say welcome, Zach. We're
Thank
glad
you.
to have you. I've worked with Zach on a couple of other things, and just, you're going to be welcome here. We're glad you're here. But I'm sure that you all have sat down with him like you did with me.
You know, I found out,
I
I
hope you
confirmed,
did.
we did not. I confirmed today with Roger, and it really is probably a ball that I dropped because I heard that that's what they were gonna do, but I never got a confirmation that the council appointed him. So it's
and
not like we weren't expecting you because we got a name, but I said, oh my goodness. And I confirmed with Roger today that he was appointed, and so I left
Let
him a
me
message.
start over. I'm sure that at some point, if
Soon.
you haven't already met with Zach, you will sit down with him and go over some things like you did with me when I came on the board. And just to compliment what Vicky said, you know, going through that virtual power plant and seeing the things that you all do, I know we refer to Ernie when we talk about that. It takes everybody, and it's impressive. It's impressive, and I appreciate all that you all do, not just for CUB, but for the counties that we serve. It's not about, it's not just about CUB, but it's about the ratepayers. And looking at my CUB bill every month,
We appreciate
I
you.
do appreciate you all taking care of those peak times. But thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Price,
Nothing more. Welcome, Zach.
again, I welcome Zach. Zach, comments, questions? anything?
You know, Mr. Hoskins would probably appreciate that I'm on this board so I could protect his trees that are on
They're
Eagle
slave.
Bend. They're no
They're
longer
slave,
there.
They're slave.
Thank you. I'm really humbled to be a part of this organization. I have the utmost respect for CUB and what you guys have been doing for several years under the current leadership, and I look forward to learning as much as I can, and not just from the leadership, but from other board members, and hopefully I can bring some value to this board. Thank you.
We're glad you're here, Betty.
Since I kind of get the final say, I'm certain you will bring value to the board. And like I say, I'm looking forward to this workshop that we'll have, orientation kind of oriented. You know, everybody just, the more that we know about the inner workings, not only of our board, but of our managerial staff, I think the better that we all understand the commitment that they make to it, and you know, and to me, the wonderful way that they do protect and represent our ratepayers. So if there's nothing else, we stand